Hey, what's going on, everybody? So today I'm going to be making a video on how to plant a pawpaw tree. I took some good information from some other sites, and I'm going to do the best I can to make the best possible planting video I can for pawpaws. So let's get into it. Alright, so I'm going to talk to you guys about what I'm using to plant this pawpaw. Of course, you need a pawpaw tree, and this is a very healthy looking seedling. This is not a grafted variety. This was purchased from a local nursery that specializes in nothing but native growing trees. It is a really cool place. Oliver Springs, it's called off Oliver Springs, called Naturescapes. It's a really cool nursery, and they have a whole section there of edibles. So if you're in East Tennessee, it's a good place to check out. They do have quite a few edibles that you wouldn't think you would want, but after you go there, you'll want them. So they had some really nice looking healthy pawpaws, and so I picked one up. And I'm going to use this as my demonstration. Seedlings tend to grow a little better. They may not produce the optimal fruit, but you never know, they could produce really good fruit as well. So you start off with the seedling plant, okay? So then I'm gonna really want to break down some of the ingredients, and then as we go through it, I'll explain why we're using it. So you guys see I have some of the Fox Farm Ocean Forest. I like to use this in conjunction with the native soil to give it a good balance. It contains a small amount of earthworm castings, bat guano, some trace minerals. Really good stuff to mix in with the soil to give it a little bit of organic life. And I've always liked to use this product. All right, the next thing on the list is actual earthworm castings. Earthworm castings are just an all-around good fertilizer. It's a slow release, so it'll go over time. It's one of the best things you can naturally give to your plants, and I'm gonna use this entire bag on our pawpaws to give it the best shot I can of giving it some good growth. But I am going to do it strategically. You'll see here when we're starting to plant it. The next item on my list is going to be some fish emulsion. I noticed they changed it from fish emulsion now. It's just called fish fertilizer, and you can pick this up at Home Depot. I believe this is about $20 for a gallon of it. Basically, it's ground up fish that's decomposed and become emulsion, and it's a liquid fertilizer, real high in nitrogen, good for plants to give them that extra boost they need. You can even use a very diluted form of this as a foliar feed or fertilizing it after you've planted it. The next thing on my list is some blood meal. Now, blood meal is also a slow release water soluble fertilizer that can be used as a nitrogen feed for your plant as well. This one you'll see when I'm using it. I'm going to use it strategically. I'm not going to put it where the initial plant will get some of that nutrients, but as the plant develops, it'll be able to obtain some of those water soluble nitrogen benefits, okay? Then one of my favorite things to always add to any planting, which I haven't always been able to find a good source of it out here, so I've had to order it, is mycorrhiza. So what mycorrhiza is it's a beneficial fungus. It's almost like it creates a network under your ground, and the roots from the tree will then connect with this mycorrhiza, this mycorrhizal organism, and it will share nutrients with each other in a symbiotic relationship, creating the network around the tree to have a much larger network than it would have had on its own had it just used its own roots. So this is a huge benefit, and I highly recommend it for almost any planting, vegetables, fruit trees, anything you possibly can, and I'll show you how we apply it. Then the last thing I have over here, is a bucket of alpaca poop. So I'm going to show you what we're going to do with that. But let's get to probably the most important part, is selecting a location and then digging up the hole. Okay? All right, so it's a little windy, so sorry if it interferes with the video at all, but I decided to pick a location. It's actually right by my other pawpaws, but I learned a little bit since I planted them. Now, pawpaws, it says they need about 6 hours of direct sunlight, and they call that full sun. From Arizona, that's kind of humorous to me, but we'll go with 6 hours a day of sunlight's full sun. They need that in order for them to be resilient and grow into a large kind of bushy tree. Otherwise they're very scattered and don't become a very full tree, and it takes them much longer to fruit. So I've got this open area in front of my creek where I planted my other 2 pawpaws that will make a great spot. They're gonna get sun coming all day during the summertime through this direction right here, and it's going to pass through this side. So then in the afternoon they'll be shaded by this giant black walnut tree, and any other trees that are over here will also give it a little bit of protection. But for the most part of the day till about noon, maybe 1 o'clock, they're gonna get full sun. So that's the area that I decided to select for the planting. Now the next step is gonna be just as important as the location, but it's actually digging the hole. So, okay, so pawpaws they like a moist but well-draining soil. They also have a very strong taproot that will go down very deep. Now you'll notice this hole here is quite a bit larger than the bucket. This big, you know, it's a 3 or 5 gallon pot, and I just need to make it so that my tree will fit in the same size hole in the ground that this pot was. And that's not the way you need to do it. You want to go at least 3 times the size of your bucket that your current plant is in. That way it gives your plant a chance to grow. You'll also notice that it's not a circle, it's a square. And the reason for this is because when a plant goes into a bucket and the roots start to form, they start following the outside of the bucket, and they keep going, and they end up binding and choking out your plant. But if you put it in a square hole, as the roots are developing, they'll go and they'll start going, and then they'll hit a corner. And then instead of being able to just go around in circles, they'll hit one of these corners and start digging in, and then your roots will expand. So that's why a square hole is so good. Also down there at the bottom, it's going to be a while before the taproot hits that. So I want to leave a special gift for this tree as it's developing down there, and we're going to talk about that in a second. But you want to have a nice soft place for the taproot to go down into. Most people don't take this step. It's not 100% necessary, but I know that the trees in the long run will appreciate it. All right, so when we're filling the hole, you got to remember, this is the only time we're going to feed this thing on any level other than the top. So we want to feed this thing for years to come. So it's kind of like a bottom type fertilizer. So we're going to add the alpaca poop, and then we're going to get some ocean forest and put it in there. Probably do a half of that bag of ocean forest. Now this is going to go back down to that taproot layer. About a half a bag of the ocean forest, a 5 gallon bag of the alpaca poop. We're going to put about a half a bag of our blood meal. Now the blood meal is a high nitrogen. Putting that in there. Interesting looking stuff for sure. Okay. Half a bag of the blood meal, and then we're going to pour a healthy amount of the fish emulsion, or the fish fertilizer as it's now called, from Alaska. And we're going to pour about half of that. This is where it gets nice and stinky. Luckily I got a beautiful assistant helping me with this. Ew.
It's a turd.
So something I didn't really talk about though is the pH level of your plants. And pH is something that's very, very cool. I'm going to talk about that during the next phase of the video. But fish emulsion actually is acidic, and it will lower your pH a little bit. Is that about half?
Yeah.
All right. So now we're going to get the shovel and we're going to mix it all together. And while he's mixing, I think I'm going to talk to you about pH. So how pH works is most people skip this step. It's a step that I think is probably the most important when it comes to fertilizing and feeding your plants, but people don't understand it, and so they don't do it. The first step is to get your soil tested. Pawpaws, they like to have their pH between about 5.5 and 6.5, depending on what you read. University of Kentucky, that's the numbers they give us. Our soil is right at 6, so it's almost perfect. So I don't really want to lower it too much, and I don't want to raise it too much. Certain things that you put into your soil are going to affect the pH. If you want to lower your pH, you can add something simple like soil sulfur. If you want to raise it, you add lime. There are easy ways to raise and lower your pH, but if your soil isn't where it needs to be, you're going to constantly have to add that additive. Why it's so important is if the pH isn't right, I kind of look at your pH as your mouth. I got my mouth here. If your pH is too low, it's like your mouth is just squeezed tight, and none of the nutrients can make it into your mouth. They just can't make it. And as you get closer and closer into the range, it gets closer and closer, and it's like, hey, I can absorb my materials, I'm in this range. And then if it goes too high the other way, it's like your mouth being so open and not be able to close, so it can't get it and absorb it. I know that's not the best way to describe it, but that's how pH works, is it's what gives your soil a chance to absorb these nutrients. Otherwise, you're just wasting your money. There's no point in doing it. So I think that's mixed in pretty nicely. So we're gonna put this at the bottom of our hole, and the reason we're gonna put it at the bottom is for future food for this plant. Okay? All right, go for it. Stinky. All right, so now we're gonna level that out with the shovel real quick. Now this is well below where this plant is going to be, it's probably spending its first couple years. If you don't have alpaca manure, which I should have said this earlier, most people don't have alpaca manure, that's okay. Alpaca manure, you don't need to use it. This is just kind of an extra step we're taking. You can get composted cow manure, steer manure, there's several other things. But the other nice thing about alpaca manure is it does kind of repel some like scavenger animals, like deer don't like it. There's a few benefits to it that you might not get from others, and we have alpacas, so we're using it. All right, so now we're going to talk about the next steps. All right, so now the layer that's going to come in contact with the roots originally is going to be our top layer. So this layer is really important. What we're using is about a 50% native soil. So we want the tree to get used to the native soil, because after its roots grow, it's not going to have all this stuff. We're then putting in some Fox Farm Ocean Forest, and we're putting our entire bag of earthworm castings in here. Let's take a look at these things. I mean, earthworm castings are awesome. I mean, I know I'm just touching worm poop right now. That might seem gross to some people, but this stuff is, they call it black gold, because for the garden, it's one of the best things you can possibly give your fruit trees. Now, I didn't post this in the beginning, but we're putting in this bag of perlite. We're going to put most of this bag in here. Perlite, it helps with a couple things. It will help absorb some of the moisture, but it also helps with drainage. So drainage is good. Drainage is very important because you don't want it to sit in standing water. So it'll kind of repel if we've got a situation where we've got standing water. So then I did talk to you guys about the mycorrhiza. Remember that bag we showed you there? So we've got it right here, and we're gonna be sprinkling this guy in. Basically, we're gonna use this whole bag. It might seem like an overkill. This is an inoculant, it's not pure mycorrhiza, so they're gonna have to form. But we're gonna have that on the top layer. So let's start mixing that together there, bud. So I think you guys might be asking yourselves, I was like, did he forget to put the tree in? And yeah, I totally forgot to put the tree in. Just kidding. No, see, what's gonna happen is you wanna make sure that you've got it at the right level, because this is gonna sink And I've found that whatever material is left, you can pull it back and put the tree in, and that'll help it from sinking in too far. That's just a tip. Okay, so we'll pull this back a little bit, put the tree in, and then make sure that we've still got it a little bit higher so that it doesn't sink too bad. We'll show you in a sec. Pretty soft, huh?
Yeah. Second time I've unburied this hole. I dug this hole.
So as you guys can see here, here's the roots underneath. I don't really see, I think this is our tap root. It's not even going down straight. You'll see a bunch of kind of small roots. It looks like the seedling was grown in like a kind of pine bark mix, which that's probably to help it with the pH levels. It's got some feeler roots here on the top. You want to make sure that when we're bearing it, you do not cover these feeler, oopsie, you do not cover these feeler roots, because if you do, the tree will suffocate and die. So we're going to place this into the hole, and we need to fill a little more dirt in. Trying to get it flat there on the bottom. Okay. Maybe a little more. All right, now let's fill in the ground around it. I'm going to carefully kind of compress it down, because I know that this is going to sink 3 to 5 inches because of how big of the hole we put it and how deep it was. Okay. Okay, now we'll get you ready for the next step. Okay, so now we're going to use a bag of ocean forest kind of as a top dressing, a top soil for this thing. This isn't the final layer that we're going to put on top, but we're gonna put it around it. It's not what we're using for mulch, but we're using it just as a layer of feeding. So that's good, Jackson. We'll just take what you've got there and we'll spread it around nice and even as a nice topsoil layer. This will also help as it rains. It'll continue to feed the tree a little bit. I put it near the tree. Yeah, the outsides don't matter.
I still want the tree to breathe.
Yeah. All right. So that concludes like the amendment portion. We're gonna put a layer of mulch on top. We'll show you that in a second and I'll explain it. All right, now we're adding a layer of our mulch layer. So mulch helps retain moisture, and it will protect the tree in the winter time. So it has a couple benefits to it. We just want to make sure, like we talked about earlier, we want to make sure that mulch is not up against the trunk. Notice a lot of people out on the East Coast out here don't seem to care about that one step, but it will burn your trunk up. So you want to keep it away from the trunk itself. Not that far, but you know, pretty close away. And then we got it really thick. This will help prevent weeds from coming up right away as well. So that's the last thing we're going to add, other than some water, but it's about to rain, so we're probably not even going to do that. All right, so that concludes the planning. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. I did get a lot of these ideas from a new YouTuber who I will put the link to his video at the top of this screen. A lot of really good ideas. He doesn't have a lot of YouTube videos, but he does have a ton of experience growing these pawpaws, and he has had some really good success getting them to grow quickly. So I encourage you to check out that channel and support him going forward. So if you like our channel, please subscribe, and we'll continue to bring you awesome content like this in the future. See ya.
Bye.